Albert Mugo, CEO, MD, KenGen. Great to be speaking to you again after such a sparkling set of results. The full year results were very good. The first half results confirm that new trend. Will you just characterize for us? I mean, I saw a number of things that happened. There was a big swing on tax. Last time you got a tax credit, this time there was a tax charge. But the growth seems to be coming out of geothermal.
Yes. Okay, so what has happened, Ali, is that when you compare the 12 years, 2015 financial year and 2016 financial year,
yes.
In 2015, we had brought in the 280 megawatts, only part of it in that part of the year. As a matter of fact, 140 megawatts had come in September. And the other 140 megawatts just came in end of December, so in fact we had not made any money from it. But when we're looking at this half year, both the entire 280 has been operating and it was fully operational. And that's why we can see the growth as a result of geothermal, both in the capacity revenue as well as in the energy revenue, has been quite huge, because then we had the full benefit of the entire year for that geothermal unit.
So we saw some big numbers there, big year-on-year revenue increase, yes. Right? That's all down to this extra capacity on geothermal.
That is because of the extra capacity of geothermal. And really what we are saying is KenGen needs to grow, because the new plant is coming in with very good revenue, very good returns. The older plant, first of all, the return was lower. Quite a bit of it is older plant, which when we were negotiating the tariffs, it was that this plant has been paid off, that it was very low. So we got sort of lower tariffs. But with the new plant, we are getting a good return, and therefore it's helping us boost our revenues.
You said in your presentation that you were the 7th biggest, Kenya is now the 7th biggest geothermal, eighth biggest, and your target is to be 4th or 5th.
Yes.
Correct? 4th or 5th, what kind of megawattage are we speaking about?
I think what we're saying is that right now the pipeline of projects that we have to 2020 is going to bring in for us geothermal of about 650 megawatts.
Additional
by 2020, which is not being done in many parts of the world. No. Most of the geothermal companies that developed the geothermal in the early days, like Italy, Japan, you find that they're not putting up more plants. And that's why then you find the growth is in countries like Kenya, Indonesia, New Zealand is also putting up new plants. But some other countries are not putting up any plant at all, and that's why we're moving up the ladder.
And this sort of expansion, do you think you're going to be able to maintain the margins? Because when you showed me the margins on that presentation, hydropower was quite low, I saw, yes. Right? Yes. But the widest margins you were getting in geothermal. I mean, looking forward, sitting where you're sitting in the cockpit, is that margin level going to be sustainable, or do you think you'll see some margin compression?
I think because the geothermal has a higher margin than the other plant, as we increase the geothermal, then we can only expect our overall margin to get better, because then the weight from the new plant, the geothermal, which has got a better margin, is going to lift the entire. So I actually expect it to look better than what we see right now.
And just to finally, on this whole renewable thing, your green energy program, which you've made tremendous strides, and we're seeing that now in the numbers. Just talk me through the other renewable energy drives. Wind?
Wind is one of them, and we are quite well prepared for wind. And that is why we are saying we have 26 megawatts in Gong right now. We are planning to add another 10 megawatts.
In Gong?
In Gong, just the same area where we have the current plant. We have talked to KFS, Kenya Forest Services, and we're expecting them to give us the approval so that we can start the process. We already have somebody ready to finance that project. We have obtained the approval from the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, because as you know, there are instruments for planes landing up in the hills, and we've gotten permission for that. So we are very ready for our 10 megawatts, and will probably come in the next 15, 18 months. And in addition to that, we have a bigger plant of 80 megawatts that is going to be in Meru. For this, we have two financiers who are very committed to it. They've already appraised the project, and we are at that stage now where what we are sorting out is the environmental and social impact assessment of the site. And we will see, and that's only the first phase of the Meru wind. In the long term, and long term here depends a lot on how much of the renewables, such as wind and solar, that the grid can take. We expect the wind farm at Meru to go to as much as 400 megawatts. So there is space for more renewables. And what we're saying also about solar is this. In the past, solar has been rather expensive. The feed-in tariff for solar connected to the grid was pegged at 12 US cents per kilowatt hour. And clearly, that cost, looking at where the Kenyans want the tariff for electricity, the consumer tariff to be, was a little high. The good news, though, is the solar technology is maturing. It's becoming of age, and the prices are coming down. We understand that in South Africa, they've been able to get bids for as low as 8 to 9 US cents per kilowatt hour. When we start seeing that kind of price, then it will be possible for more developments of solar to come in Kenya. Because if it's cheap, then there's no reason for it not being increasingly being developed in Kenya, because we've got good solar. And KenGen has had some studies in a number of sites where we think we can put up solar plant. We continue to accumulate the data, even as we are watching the international market prices for solar. So both wind and solar will be coming in, probably not as much as geothermal, because you see the beauty of geothermal is baseload, is reliable, it's there 24 hours. The solar and the wind, you have to find a way of balancing it out, because the times wind is not there. Of course, at night there is no sun, so you have to make up for that time by another plant. But geothermal as a renewable is superior to any of those two sources. But nevertheless, in a good power system, you want a good balance where you have all sources, because when one is not there, you can get the other. That is why in the old days, Kenya was over 80% dependent on hydro. Now the hydro is giving us less than 40%. So we want a healthy mix of the renewables, and then the thermals will not disappear, but they'll be there at standby. They'll be helping us to meet any peak, unusual peak, demand that may come. They'll be there to help us maybe in those times when there is drought, and you know, Kenya from time to time we have cycles of drought. So the thermal will be there as an emergency and spare to help us in those times.
Going back to those earnings, Albert, there was a huge surge in other income, about 888%, if I remember correctly. Yes. Can you just tell us briefly what that was about?
Yeah, so Andy, what has happened is that we have been basically a generating company, power generating company. And we see that as the environment changes, we also need to be agile and move with looking at how we can get some other revenues. After all, we find that as the country demands more electricity, we do not have the opportunity to get all the investments that's required to meet the entire power demand. So private companies are coming in, and our market share is reducing somewhat in that segment of generation. So it's only fair then for us to start looking at other sources, and one of the sources where we've identified that we can make some money is in selling steam. So we are providing steam currently to some flower farm, not too much, but in future, in the industrial parks that we are targeting in our area, we're expecting to provide a lot more steam to industries where steam is a primary element of their manufacturing. In addition, we've also seen that some of the companies that have been licensed lately to produce geothermal are looking to KenGen, who have got experience in advising them. So we are doing consultancies for those geothermal companies, and some have even given us contracts to do drilling. As a matter of fact, by December 2015, we just completed drilling 2 wells for a company near our carrier. And so the other revenues that we've made that you've seen in our results, the main sources are the sale of steam, the maintenance of steam fields for companies that have drilled and they want maintenance to be done, and also drilling. And that's going to contribute quite a bit for us in the days to come.
Excellent. Albert, 18 profits warnings in the Nairobi Securities Exchange in the last 12 months, and nearly every single one of them has been talking about FX impairments. You've got some very big loans. You touched on this in the presentation. Do you want to just describe to people that what you said, that you are shielded from the FX movements? Because I think a lot of people, would be thinking about that. Okay,
so about 80% of our total debt is denominated in foreign exchange. We have the yen, we have the US dollars, we have the euro. Those are the main currencies that we've borrowed on. We are a regulated industry, and when this policy of regulating the power sector came up, we were able to agree with the regulator that because our power purchase agreements are on a fixed tenor, let's say 20 years, 25 years, we are not allowed, we're not like other industries where if your inputs go up, you then change the price. No, we signed power purchase agreements for that long period. So it was also then realized that it would be very difficult for the utility like KenGen to take on the foreign exchange risk, which when it happens, you are not able to adjust your prices. So our power purchase agreements, therefore, then are pegged on a certain exchange rate, Kenya shillings to the euro, the dollar, the yen, at the time that we are signing the power purchase agreement. What that means then is going forward, for example, when we start repaying the loans, to the extent that that exchange rate has moved, we will not, as KenGen, bear any foreign exchange losses, because we'll be able to pass on that foreign exchange loss to KenGen to the power consumers. And so we are completely shielded, so that 80% of our debt, which is foreign denominated, will not affect our results because there has been depreciation of the Kenya shilling. As a matter of fact, if we were not,
yes,
would have been in a very bad situation.
Well, that's okay, because I saw the yen. And
yes.
I was worried about
exactly,
that, because
yeah.
you'll remember Portland Cement last week
exactly.
talking about the yen.
Yes.
So
because if some of our yen loans, when you look at what has happened, and we've been paying them every 6 months, and for some time they are stationary, other times they are up in terms of the Kenyan shillings. And you'd wonder, but these have not reduced. And that is because of the forex, the change between the Kenya shilling and the yen itself. But the good news is, when there is that loss, we're able to pass it on as KenGen. We are not affected.
So for investors, that's an important point, because it really shields you from that FX risk. A couple of questions. These were great results. I mean, they followed on what were very strong full-year results. You mentioned that you're looking at the rights issue in June. This has been long awaited. I'm sure you want to now move on that. Is that a reasonable target, June, for the rights issue?
Yes, we've drawn the program. We are together with our advisors. We are working flat out to make the June date to happen. We have done a draft information memoranda that we've been able to submit to CMA. And so when we look at the steps that are required, we we are well placed to meet that date. We don't want it to change. And so we are confident that this is something that should work within this financial year.
Both the CEO, Albert, and myself own shares in KenGen because I think both of us believe that we have a lot of confidence in it. I mean, if you look at the price, I keep calling it an anomaly, and I think the rights issue will go a long way to normalizing the share price. So just from my side, we're really excited, Albert, to be interviewing you today. Congratulations to you and your team. Very, very thorough presentation. And, from my perspective to all of you out there, I remember the day KenGen was IPO'd, and I think there's the possibility of a similar exuberance developing once we get this rights issue done. So I wish you and your team all the good fortune. I think these results you delivered in the last 18 months are really strong and basically compelling. So really wishing you the best.
So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
We're also looking forward. We are happy about the results, and we're also happy about the reaction that we've seen from our investors and also our development partners, because they've been very willing and ready to work with us.
No, I've been amazed at how supportive they are, because we see them at all your events, and they're extremely supportive. And these are not small development partners. You know, the EIB is the biggest bank in the world, I think, of that type. AFD, you've got very, very strong partners, and I think the share price is beginning to appreciate that fact, that if people are prepared to give you $500 million, a rights issue for a few $100 million is not that much, really.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay.